everybody. Checking back in on our gaps in nutrition discussion. There are lots of topics that we can talk about. Excuse me. Before I jump into this one about keto and carbs, just going back to clarify for the fats video, fats was one of the places that we get a lot of calories. So if you've gone completely fat-free or too low in fats, you're likely to see your dog losing weight. Really important to keep that in mind. So whenever you're making dietary changes, especially if you're going to be doing a home-prepared meal or some new food, know what your dog's weight is, what it ought to be, and start to monitor any changes in that. But if you're doing lean proteins only and really just vegetables without the fats, you need the fat, then you're likely to see your dog start losing a fair amount of weight. And that's really not necessarily an ideal thing, nor is it, even if we're trying to be weight conscious, is it the ideal way to achieve that. So fats are not a bad thing. And keep in mind that that's where a fair amount of our calories will come from. So speaking of calories, we also need to consider what calories we might have been getting from grains. Now, I'm not telling you to add craptastic grains to your diet. And when people move into home-prepared foods, the most common recipe people try to make is chicken and rice. With maybe some peas and some carrots. And so we wind up with a lot of carbohydrate in that. We wind up with protein coming from pea sources in addition to the meats, and the carrots can add a lot of sugar depending on how much you use. So is rice the right ingredient? Maybe not. It's not going to be problematic if it's used periodically, but I don't want you to get in food ruts, right? I don't want you to create a recipe that feels a whole lot like the same thing every single week, and it's almost like scooping out a bag of a cup of kibble from a bag, right? It's the same combination of things all the time. That would not be ideal. Variety in all of the things, in the mix and the match and the rearrangement of what's delivered and when, and a variety of proteins, a variety of probiotic sources, a variety of vegetables. All of that can be extremely beneficial to the diet. We are not necessarily looking to put all dogs into a keto diet. In fact, some dogs, and I was just consulting with somebody about this recently, if your dog is prone to seizures, epilepsy, a keto diet is not ideal for them. And so we need to keep all those things in mind. If you're trying to solve a dog that has cancer, maybe going keto is a consideration, but you need to do it wisely, well educated, and with veterinary guidance. They may argue with the diet. In fact, I have heard veterinarians who will say, don't feed a cancer dog a raw diet. So some of them may argue with that. So you have to have the team of people that are going to help you pull all this information together and understand what you're doing. But know that going keto is not necessarily the right thing for all dogs, nor is it necessary for most dogs. So you could look at adding in rice sometimes, sweet potatoes sometimes, millet sometimes, oats sometimes. If I were going to do this as a home prepared recipe, and remember, I'm the one that doesn't want to source all this. I'm the one that doesn't want to put it all together and calculate it out and create these recipes. Can I do them? Yes. Do I want to do it? Is that what I like to do? No. That's why the base mix plus adding the fresh raw protein to it on a daily basis works for me, why that's easy, and why it's also really great food for my dogs. But if you're one that is like, okay, I'm in the kitchen all the time anyway, I like to cook, I like to do all this sort of stuff, then variety to these things is going to be your friend. Don't get into a rut, and look at the sources of carbohydrates that your dog is getting, and then really think about how much that is. Probably you need to be in the neighborhood of, I would say maybe 20-25% at most, or less in the carbohydrate range, right? Probably down around 10 to 15, 20% is somewhere in the right neighborhood for most of our typical pets. But when you start trying to get them into keto diets, you have a whole different set of things to think about and a whole different way of looking at what's going into your dog's diet. But don't feel like you have to restrict them from every carbohydrate on the planet, and take a look at that. Now, if we have dogs with allergies, then we might want to really think about restriction of glutens. We might want to restrict grains. And so that's what the new rescue diet from Volhard does. It's really, all of that has been eliminated, but it's not entirely carb free. And so there's a lot of real benefit to thinking about where your dog's carbohydrates are coming from and adding the variety to that. And again, if you've gone into this completely fat-free, carb-free area, it's probably not a good place to be. And for some dogs who have specific predisposition to certain ailments, it's probably not wise. So really important that you understand the animal that you're feeding and what all these components, why they're there in the first place. Why do we need these amino acids? Why do we need these vitamin minerals? Why do we need them, and what do they do in the body that makes sense? And so that you are sure that when you are creating a recipe that you're not eliminating something that's a really big deal. That's where variety can help us make sure that we are minimizing the gaps as much as possible, because the variety adds in different things. And if you get in a rut and you're consistently missing something specific, then you're going to have a long-term issue. Supplementing all home prepared foods, whether it's raw or lightly cooked, with a good vitamin mineral supplement like Endurance is necessary in my opinion. And if for some reason you're still sticking with the kibble diet, supplementing your vitamin mineral nutrient with a supplement like Endurance is absolutely essential to make sure that we are coming above the range of sort of the minimums that they put in. So when you think about a kibble diet, they're meeting the minimums, not the optimals. And certainly as we have dogs that have issues and ailments and things of that nature, we want to make sure their vitamin mineral nutrient profile is as solid as it can be. And when we start mixing and matching things and adding to the bowl, we can certainly add some benefit, but we can also create some things that throw us out of balance even further if we're not careful. So all this to say, monitor your calories, right? Know where your calories are coming from. A big source of them is your fats. Don't necessarily throw your dog into keto, and don't shy away from all carbs. Keep them whole food, healthy sources, and keep them in a lower range of the recipe. Think around, again, 15 to 20% total carbohydrate for most dogs, most times. I'll also say that when we talk about balance and trying to keep the nutrient profile in alignment, Don't sweat it bowl by bowl, right? Now, if you're going to make a big recipe of something that's going to be what your dog eats for the next 2 weeks, then yeah, you have to keep that in mind. But if you are truly doing this sort of variety and this flow of things, you are more likely to get better balance over time, over the course of a week. When you are, again, this is part of why we do things like the cottage cheese day, or adding yogurt to one of the meals a couple times a week, or adding kefir to the meal a couple of times a week, or veggies periodically, or rotating the protein. That's where we start to see the nutrient profiles come into better alignment because the variety is present. But again, a good vitamin mineral supplement like Endurance, I think, is essential to everybody, every single person that's feeding kibble and every person that's making a home prepared recipe. And this, literally, you'll start with just a pinch, like a little sprinkle. So this little bag is going to last, as this is a sample, it'll last quite a while. But when you buy a 5-pound bag, it's going to last you a long time to supplement the vitamins and minerals for your dog's diet. Hit me up with questions. I sort of changed the topic here. Sorry about that.